Everyone, good morning, good, maybe for some people still good evening, and some already are in the afternoon, Australia, New Zealand, good afternoon. It's so wonderful to see you today. We're going to do the second day on developing a fearless heart. Developing the mind of great compassion, developing the mind that is willing to take each and every sentient being, their well-being into our own heart. So maybe when we start a session, we start with a little meditation in order to set up a good motivation. Tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, I will explain more about why that is important. So if you haven't heard that before, just go with me for a couple of days. But it is very beneficial to focus your mind before any activity that you're doing, especially when it is a Dharma activity, and then set your motivation. So let's do that. So make yourself comfortable. And we use a few minutes just to calm the mind. I know when we participate in the teachings through Zoom, we keep ourselves busy until the last minute before it all starts. So then when we sit down, the mind is still busy. The mind is not going to relax and calm down straight away. We need to give it some time for that. So while you sit, you are aware of your body. And with that, you bring your awareness to the present moment, to the here and now. And you let your mind calm down. And then call to mind your motivation for doing this course. Why do you want to develop a fearless heart? Is that just for your own benefit so that you feel better? Or is that also so that you can connect more from your heart with others? And that you somehow know that that is beneficial? So we can think that by participating in this course, we want to develop our potential for loving kindness and compassion, not just for our own sake, but for the sake of each and every sentient being that we encounter, whether that is in this life, future lives, wherever in the universe. And by thinking like that, allow your heart to open up. Reaching out to sentient beings who are all like you, wanting to be happy, wanting to be free of suffering. And then we can rejoice for having that courage to take that responsibility. How wonderful. And with that motivation, we're going to start this session. How are you feeling today? Are you doing all right? I hope that yesterday, sometimes when we go through teachings like this, they keep the mind busy. So even after the classes, the mind keeps thinking about the material. And that is a good thing. I think that is our inner wisdom that wants to understand. This is the connection with our own inner potential that starts to surface, that is reflecting on these topics. So when that happens, just let it happen. Don't get involved too much. This is clearing out your mind. This is making the mind more focused on what is really important in life. So if that's going on for you, I sincerely rejoice. So what did we do yesterday? What did we speak about? We spoke about what is compassion and why do we want to develop compassion? Why is it important today in this world? And after that, we spoke about the benefits of compassion and how we can practice compassion either with a worldly motivation or as part of a spiritual practice. And so within this course, I talk about it as being part of a spiritual practice. Being part of a spiritual practice means that we're going to look at the motivation and means that we're going to look at the place that this practice has within the path that we try to develop in our mind, which is a path where we develop our full potential for love, compassion, and wisdom. So the motivation is very important, and I spoke about that a little bit yesterday, how we have these three types of spiritual motivations. Either we do it for what is coming after this life, or we do it for our own liberation, or we do it for the liberation of all sentient beings. So that compassion that we're going to develop, or that we're going to talk about, that we wish to develop, that is based on how we practice compassion in relationship to ourselves. Whatever relationship we have with others depends upon how we relate to ourselves. And so at the moment, we are not sure yet what self-compassion is. And so yesterday afternoon, we spoke about certain minds that can look like self-compassion, but they're not self-compassion, like self-centeredness or self-pity or self-esteem. And I know that it is still not clear what is self-compassion, especially within the spiritual path. But we will go there slowly, slowly, It is already good to know that you don't know. It is already good to know that you think, oh, but is this good for us? Or is that what is that going to be helpful? So we will talk about that more and more to really get the place where you can see, this is self-compassion. Then compassion for others can quite easily come from that. And so if from yesterday you got that there are some thoughts and actions that are beneficial in helping opening up the mind, and then there are certain thoughts and actions that do the opposite. They close our mind. They make us very focused upon ourselves, self-centered or self-absorbed. And so these actions that do that, we call them the delusions. These actions are motivated by the delusions. And it is not so easy to distinguish between either one of them. Is this going to open my mind, or is this going to close down my mind? Because there are many delusions that feel actually really good, attachment, pride. They feel like I feel really good when they arise in my mind. And then we are living in a society where they are promoted as being really fantastic to follow. If you're going to follow your attachment, if you're going to follow your pride, you're going to be on the top of the world, you're going to be successful, you're going to be healthy, you're going to be... So we do not see that actually we are fueling our delusions. And in the long run, that is going to make us feel worse. That's not going to make us feel happy. So there is a confusion there. Then we also have many deep-seated beliefs, maybe based on our conditioning, based on our culture, based on family traditions, that are connected to our delusions. And everything when that belief is appealed to, the delusions that are connected to that, they get triggered and they arise in our mind. So there, then we have this, it's almost like this, not a fight, but from our tradition, we may be pulled to do certain things, but actually we have the feeling, but it's not making me feel good, but I have to do it in order to please my dad, my mom, whoever that I have that loyalty towards, but for me, doesn't feel good. So we have to be aware that that is also playing a role. And then we are living at a time that we learn that all kinds of products are good for us, when in actuality, they might make us sick. We can think about, and I have to be careful with what I say, but let me talk about my own experience. If I take medicine, normal medicine, my body gets sick, I get sick. So medicine, if I take vaccination, I get sick. If I wash my body with certain products, I get sick. Because within all these products, there are some toxins in there. We put toxins on our food, we put toxins in our water, we put toxins in our air, And so that will affect our body, that will affect our mind. So then it looks like, wow, but this is clean, this is clean water. This is coming from our council, and they have added some things in us that are really good for us. But are they really good for you? We have to check. And there is a lot of misinformation about what is good and what is not good. And so that is confusing. And we might, by believing all that, we might actually trigger our deluded mind more and more, obscure our mind more and more, and get disconnected from our essence, get disconnected from where we can feel that we are all part of one humanity. So we have to check that. So it's not so easy to get really connected in ourselves, because there are so many forces that are keeping us away from that. And so living in society at the moment, according to Buddhism, we are living in degenerate times, which means that we are living in a time where the delusions are strongly triggered. People are overpowered empowered by their delusions. They're following their delusion. You know, one way that our society fuels that is by saying, follow your feelings. You have to make sure that you feel good. You have to make sure that you feel good. But we will look into that tomorrow deeper, and we can see that just feeling good and following that is actually fueling your attachment. It is fueling your deluded mind. It is disconnecting you from what is really making you feel good. It gives some temporary good feeling, but it is disconnecting you from going to a place where you can feel good in a stable, peaceful way. So I hope we get that more and more clear during this course. But what we can do is we have a mind that we can direct. So we can direct the mind towards activities and thoughts that are going to help us to open up the mind. And then we can direct our mind and our thoughts and our actions in a way that it is fueling our delusions and fueling our fears. These are the two options that we have, right? There's no third option. Even if we think, well, I do nothing because I don't know, we are somehow fueling our ignorance. So distinguishing what belongs to each direction is very, very important, and it's not so easy. And in order to do that, we need to study a lot. We need to meditate. We need to look into our mind. We need to understand how our mind works. And then slowly, slowly, due to study what you do in the books, due to observing what is going on in your mind, slowly, slowly, you get the feeling like, oh, now I get it. You know, this is actually helping me. And this, what I always believed is helping me, is actually not helping me. So that is, I hope that you understand that that is the essence of what I'm trying to do in this course. So what are we going to do today? Today we're going to talk about the foundation that can help to develop a compassionate heart. You know, just opening the heart because you have an affinity with opening the heart without having a healthy foundation is not going to last long. Making a good foundation is like creating the conditions that the heart easily can open. And so in order to do that, we are talking about practices. In Buddhism, we say practices that are common with beings of lower capacity, practices that are in common with beings that strive for a better rebirth, practices that are common with beings that are not just obsessed with the happiness of this life. They go beyond this life. So what are these practices? First of all, it is contemplating the difficulty to finding a human rebirth as we have it, with all kinds of leisures and opportunities. And I will explain what that means, you know. Yes, finding a human rebirth, and then on top of that, finding a human rebirth which has leisure and opportunity. So we'll talk about that this morning. And then this afternoon, we'll talk about contemplating impermanence, impermanence in general, impermanence of life, of whatever arises in life, objects, all the environment, everything is impermanent. And also we'll talk about the impermanence of ourselves. You know, our body is not going to last forever. So we'll talk about death and how that is going to be helpful in waking up our mind, right? Developing compassion is part of waking up. Waking up means seeing things as they are. Stop denying, stop telling stories to ourselves that have no truth, but look at things as they are. Waking up is not always a pleasant experience. Mostly it's not so pleasant. But once you have woken up, once you have gone through the pain of waking up, you are free. You feel a freedom in yourself. That freedom comes with the feeling of happiness, which is more stable, which is more peaceful. It is a feeling of, you got it. And no matter what happens around you, it's not going to disturb your mind. Your mind is free from that. And then with that, talking about that, we will also talk a little bit about cause and effect, about the law of cause and effect, about how karma works and how that is important in terms of, finding ways for ourselves to be happy and to be free of suffering. But I won't go into that too much today. And yeah, okay. So then the precious human rebirth, this is the first topic in the what we call the stages of the path to enlightenment. And now after thinking, is that really true? But it is definitely one of the first topics. It depends a little bit which tradition that you follow. So what does it mean being a human being in Buddhism? So human beings are part of a big group which we call sentient beings. Sentient beings are all the beings that possess mind. And everyone who possesses mind has feelings arising in that mind, moment to moment. Every moment feeling arises in that mind. And all these beings who have a mind and who have feelings, they want to be happy and they do not want to suffer. And in order to do that, when pleasant feelings arise, in the mind of sentient beings, attachment immediately follows in an attempt to get more pleasure. And when displeasure arises, or when we feel threatened or in danger, aversion arises in the mind in order to move away from that. This is what we share with all sentient beings. Reacting in this way is reacting emotionally. We do not have to think about it, right? We do that automatically. So within that group of sentient beings, there is one group that are the human beings. But for instance, another group is the animals. They have a similar mind than we have. They also have feelings arising in every moment. And when you observe animals, you can see that they also want to be happy and they want to be free of suffering. Right? If you speak nicely to animals, they react and they show you, oh, I like this. And when you speak harshly, you can see they are afraid. They run away from you. Their tail is between their legs. Right? So in that way, animals are the same. And then in Buddhism, we have different groups also of beings that we cannot see at the moment with our eyes, like spirits, like we call them hungry ghosts, like gods, like demigods. So there are a huge amount of sentient beings, and human beings is only one part of that. All these sentient beings, we can all call them person. And in Buddhism, person means that which is imputed independence upon the 4 or 5 aggregates. That is the definition that we use for that. And what that means is that a person is someone who has a mind. 4 of the aggregates are related to the mind, and then 1 aggregate is related to the body. So independence on having a mind, and then most sentient beings have also a body. Independence on that, we say, you are a person. So I'm not my body and my mind, but in dependence on having a body and a mind, I am called a person. So in relation to us, we have a human body in this life. And our body has what we call a substantial cause, something that needs to be present in order for it to arise. The substantial cause for a body, a human body, is the sperm and egg of dad and mom. Right? So our body is coming from our parents. The substantial cause for the body is coming from our parents. And then there is a cooperative condition which needs to be present for a human being to become really a human being. And so that is our consciousness, that is our mind. And the moment the sperm and the egg come together, the consciousness enters into the sperm and the egg. And then you have all the aggregates together to call that a person. The mind has also its own substantial cause. The cause that needs to be present in order for mind to exist. And the substantial cause for the mind is the previous moment of the mind. So if you, and this is maybe a big leap, but if we think that the substantial cause for the mind is the previous moment of mind, and the substantial cause for that is the previous moment of mind, then you can, when you keep going like that, you can see that for the mind, we cannot posit a beginning. For my body, I have a beginning. It is the sperm and egg coming together and the consciousness entering. That's the beginning of my body. But for the mind, going back, needing a previous moment of mind in order for mind to arise, means that I cannot posit a first moment of mind, which in Buddhism we say the mind has been existing since beginningless time. And if I cannot posit a beginning of the mind, I can also not posit a destruction of the mind or a moment that the mind doesn't exist anymore. Which means that our mind, according to Buddhism, exists since beginningless time and will always continue to exist. And within that existence of mind, we take rebirth again and again and again. The body comes and then the body dies. And then we take another body and the body dies. So taking rebirth as a human being is not something that we can take for granted. If there are so many other sentient beings who have a similar mind than us, you know, the chance that we take another type of rebirth is actually much bigger than the chance of taking a human rebirth. So taking a human rebirth is seen by even the gods as the most precious rebirth that you can have within all the realms of existence. Within having a human body, we have all the conditions, all the qualities that we need in order to develop quickly on the spiritual path, in order to develop our mind quickly. In other places of rebirth, there are causes and conditions that actually obstruct that development of our inner qualities. For instance, if I would be reborn as a hungry ghost, where I experience so much hunger and thirst, my mind will be occupied with trying to find that all the time. You know, there is no space for even thinking about, I'm going to do some spiritual development. You know, there is too much suffering there. Also, as an animal, you know, we do not have the capacity to spend time developing our mind. We have an ignorant mind. We cannot think clearly. You know, there are no teachings available in a way that we can hear them. We cannot practice them. So that is also not a good human rebirth, not a good rebirth in order to develop ourselves spiritually, excuse me. Then even being born as a god realm is a place where we have all the pleasures of the six senses. So we all the time, we have a great time. And so you know that when you have a great time, you also don't think about spiritual practice. And so therefore they say within the human realm, there is some suffering. And suffering is that which helps us to engage in spiritual practice. But there is also some happiness, and that happiness keeps us going in spiritual practice. So in that sense, being born as a human is very conducive for spiritual practice. Having too much suffering, you don't want to think about it. But having too much happiness, you also don't want to think about it. Right? And we can see that within this world. There are human beings who suffer so much. You know, they're just spending all the energy in surviving and getting to the next day. No time for spiritual practice. The mind is not in the right place to even think about it. And there are also human beings. They have such amazing life. They have so much money. They have everything that they wish for. They have maybe even good relationships. They never think about doing spiritual practice. Why would you? Right? So having some suffering is really good for spiritual practice, but not too much. And then having some happiness is also good for spiritual practice because it keeps us going. So we have at the moment this human rebirth, and according to Buddhism, having a human rebirth is the best use of this body, is when we use it for spiritual practice. We can use it for spiritual practice. We develop our mind, we purify our negativities, we counteract our disturbing emotions, we study about the nature of reality, and we can open our heart by means of developing compassion. You know, these are all possibilities that we have being a human being. We have an intelligence that, for instance, animals do not have. We can use that intelligence in order to fuel our delusions, but we can also use that intelligence in order to free ourselves from the delusions. So that is very precious that we have that. So having a human body is already quite rare if we look into whole of existence, of all the sentient beings that exist anywhere within the universe. But then from within humanity itself, having a human rebirth, which what we call has freedoms and richnesses that are going to help us to, which are conducive for spiritual practice, that is even more rare. And so such a rebirth we call in Buddhism a precious human rebirth. It's not just a rebirth, but it's a rebirth that is free from certain conditions and that has certain richnesses or endowments which are conducive for spiritual practice. So I will mention them as they're presented in the text, and then we go and look into what kind of conditions help me to have more time or have a mindset that wants to engage in spiritual practice. Because I think, you know, they are coming from Buddhism. They are, so when I read them, I find them a little bit old-fashioned, but they're still accurate, you know, and they're still good to reflect upon. But I think to make it a little bit more juicy, we also need to apply it to our own situation. So use this as an example of how to think. So precious human rebirth, according to Buddhism, has 8 freedoms. 4 of them refer to the fact that we are free from unfortunate states of rebirth. We are free from being born in the hell. We are free of being born as a hungry ghost or a spirit. We are free of being born as an animal. And we are free of being born as a long life God. That is a freedom. We are not caught up in the suffering that comes with these states of rebirth, or even the pleasure that comes with such states of rebirth. We are free of that. And then 4 freedoms refer to unfortunate conditions related to being born as a human being. So for instance, we are free from being born in a country where there are no Dharma teachings. We are free from being born with impaired mental or physical faculties. You know, we don't have handicaps, mental handicaps, physical handicaps. And we are free of holding wrong views. This means that you know, specifically, you could, for instance, think we are free from being born as thinking, well, enlightenment doesn't exist. You know, this is just, my mom, she said, this is just what life is. Life is just suffering. There is nothing else. When you strongly believe in that, there is no foundation in your mind to even look for something that might help you to free yourself from suffering. So we are free of these views. So these are the 8 freedoms. And by reflecting, you know, I'm very lucky that I have not any of these conditions, because any of these conditions would actually have created a life for me that I wouldn't have any interest, or I would not have no possibility to connect with the teachings of the Buddha, or to connect with teachings that are going to show me a way that are without suffering, or that help me to free myself from suffering. And so besides these 8 freedoms, our precious human rebirth also has 10 endowments or qualities, or sometimes they're called awards. 5 of them are personal and 5 depend upon others. So the first one is we are born as a human being. You know, that is a quality. That, and we'll talk about that later, that comes about causes and conditions that create a quality. So being born as a human being, we already have qualities due to that. And then we are born in a region where there are Dharma teachings available. And thanks to the internet, you know, even if you're living in a country where no one has ever heard about the Dharma, if you have imprints with respect to the Dharma, you will find it on the internet and you will have access to the teachings. Yeah, so, but if you're born in a family which has no thinking about it, no interest in it, it becomes more difficult. So we are born somewhere where we have access to the Dharma teachings. And then we are born with complete faculties. You know, we can listen to the Dharma teachings. The ears are extremely important. If you're born deaf, you know, you have so much less access to the teachings. Imagine, you know, they're not available in Braille, deaf. The listening of the teachings, listening makes that you actually can feel it in your heart, that you can feel it in your energy system. That is a very important transmission to get. Being blind makes that you cannot read the teachings. You can just listen, but you cannot really engage in any study on your own. Although there are more and more audiobooks available, right? Being blind and deaf together, very, very difficult, you know. And we can even think about having other kind of physical handicaps that make it very difficult to travel, to do certain activities that are part of spiritual practice. Being born with a mental handicap, you know, how can you connect with the teachings? How can you study? How can you practice? Much more difficult, of course, depending on the severity of the handicap. But you can imagine human beings being born in a very handicapped body, and even if the mind what they say, we have not committed any of the 5 very heavy negative actions, like killing one's father, killing one's mother, killing someone who has been liberated from cyclic existence, drawing blood from a Buddha, or creating division within the Sangha community. So that is a quality that we have. We have never gone in that path of very heavy negativities. If we have, we create strong obstacles to even meeting with the Dharma. You know, so we have not done that because we met with the Dharma. And then we have some kind of faith in the teachings of the Buddha, whether that is the teachings related to, you know, the teachings that talk about the nature of reality, whether these are the sutra teachings, whether these are the teachings that talk about how to develop ethical conduct. So we have some faith that they might be helpful for our mind. So that is a quality too. You know, I have a whole family who says, well, why would we even look at that? You know, no interest at all. So if you have no faith, you're never going to look at the teachings. You never want to listen to the teachings. It's not doing anything to you. So having that is a quality, something that we can appreciate in ourselves. It's not coming from nowhere. And then we have 5 endowments or qualities that depend upon others, which are that we are born in the time that the Buddha appeared. And not just that the Buddha appeared, you know, even he appeared so long ago. The Buddha also taught. There are also Buddhas that appear, that are predicted to appear, not going to teach. You know, they will affect the world, but they won't teach. So we are born in a time that the Buddha did teach. And these teachings are still remaining in the world. And then there are still practitioners who follow these teachings. And then there are also beings who have so much loving kindness that they support others in practicing the teachings. Right? Without that support, it's very difficult. If you think about big monasteries, the only way they can survive is due to support, due to the kindness of others. So if they would disappear, you know, then you cannot have a monastery. You cannot have monks and nuns who study and who develop their mind with the teachings. So we have all these qualities, which is very amazing, right? Not one of them came out of the blue. Not one of them came by chance. They all came because you somehow created the causes and conditions for that. And if you think about all the beings in this world, think how many have these 8 freedoms and 10 endowments together. That's a very, very small part of all these human beings. So it's very rare to have that. So these are presented within Buddhism, and besides these endowments, we can reflect on what kind of helpful conditions we have in our life that give us the possibility of practicing the Dharma. So I would like you to do some journaling, maybe 8 minutes, 9 minutes. I think we don't need the whole 10, but we can see. And I'm going to ask you, I'll have 2 questions for you, which I need to copy and put them in the chat. The first question is, what conditions are you free of that help you to engage in spiritual practice? And then the next one is, what good fortune or what qualities do you have that are supportive of your spiritual practice? All right, so I'm going to give you 10 minutes for that, and I'm going to put them in the chat. Here they come. Not to register. I want you to, everyone. All right. What conditions are you free of that help you to engage in spiritual practice? And what good fortune do you have in life that is supportive of spiritual practice? And so you write just down what comes to your mind. And then we have a lot to rejoice about. All right. 2 minutes before we finished, I will call you back. Or I will let you know that you have a few more minutes to finish. So you have 2 more minutes. And so whatever you answered might be helpful in the discussion group later. So keep them. So in Buddhism, we talk about, is everybody back? I think yes. In Buddhism, we talk about having a precious human rebirth. And nowadays in society, we hear many people talking about gratitude, practicing being grateful for what you have, and how that practice is helpful for the mind. So at the end of this session, we're going to do a meditation on that, where I mixed a little bit the freedoms and endowments according to Buddhism and how we can think in terms of practice or gratitude. So I'll leave the questions that are in the chat. I've seen them, but I'll leave them till the end if that is okay. They don't look like they're urgently need to be answered. I want to talk 10 more minutes about the great value of having this precious human rebirth and how it is rare and how it is difficult to obtain. And I already said a little bit about it, but in order to understand how precious it is, what the value is of a precious human rebirth, we can think about that due to the fact that we have this human rebirth, we can observe the law of cause and effect. And if you have heard some Buddhist teachings before, or maybe you're coming from another tradition where you talk about karma, then you know that whatever we experience in life is coming from causes and conditions that we created previously. And so that also means that future happiness, future suffering is coming from causes and conditions that we create today. So as a human being, we have this capacity to observe our mind, to observe our behavior, and to even make changes in that. So we can think about the law of cause and effect, and by understanding that and by applying that to our mind and to our actions, we can actually influence our future. We can change course. We can redirect our life into a direction that is more pleasant, more beneficial, more acknowledging our human potential. As an animal, we do not have that capacity because we do not you know. In Buddhism, we say they are too stupid, but I know do they know about karma? Do they know about applying karma? No, they do not. You know, they follow their instinct. We are actually similar to them if we do not use our intellect in order to check what we are doing, how we are reacting. If we are doing exactly, we behave in exactly the same way as animals if we just follow our feelings, just follow our gut, you know, without checking. So no, then you do not follow the law of cause and effect. But if we can observe that law, you know, we can say, I'm going to stop engaging in actions that cause suffering, and I'm going to start or engage more in actions that are causes for happiness. And so that then is going to help you to eventually attain your goal, whether that is having a better future rebirth, whether that is having become totally liberated from samsara, or whether that is developing your full potential and becoming enlightened. And so due to having that human rebirth, we can even think about achieving these goals. And also the human body is the best body to develop certain states of mind that are going to help us to achieve that goal. For instance, developing the mind that wants to get out of samsara. We can only do that in a human body. You know, also the gods, they have quite some intelligence, and they can also learn about Buddhism and about generating the mind that doesn't want to be in samsara, but they experience so much pleasure that pleasure is going to stop them from even being able to generate such a mind. And so if we use our life to become more aware about the law of cause and effect, about goals that go beyond just following our And so if we look into the fact that where does our human rebirth come from? You know, and we can think about all the causes that we created in order to have a precious human rebirth. It is very difficult to create these causes, because what we need to create to have a precious human rebirth, for the human rebirth itself, we need to have a practice of ethics. We need to have practiced morality. On the basis of practicing morality, we create a positive energy that is going to lead to the rebirth of a human being. And then we also, you know, just being a human being is not enough. We also need, for instance, if we practice Dharma, we need to have enough resources. We need to, and for that, we need to practice generosity. If you want to have a connection with many sentient beings in which you exchange the Dharma, it's also good to, what they call, be attractive, in the sense that people want to listen to you, you know. And in order to develop a mind or this quality, you need a lot of patience. And then in order to have a human body that is here to be of benefit to others, you also need stainless prayers. We do not need to just practice one lifetime ethics. We need to practice many lifetimes. So the fact that we are here in this human body and we have all these causes and conditions coming together is the result of having practiced for a very, very long period of time, many, many lifetimes. So you can be happy about that. You did that, you know. You might feel, I'm actually miserable in this life, you know, I'm so miserable in this life. But the fact that you are here and the fact that you have all these causes and conditions coming together means that in before this life, you have lifetimes generated a positive mind, created the causes and conditions to be here right now. And even if you do not feel so happy in this life, you can be very happy that you have this life because it is so precious. It is so rare to find this. Should I go into that? Maybe not. Time runs so fast, huh? So also we can think about the preciousness of the human rebirth in the sense that of numbers. I think I already mentioned that a little bit. We can think about all the realms of existence. And of all these realms, there are realms that what we call are happy migrations, where we experience in general more happiness and suffering. And there are suffering migrations, where we experience more suffering than happiness. So these suffering migrations, the number of sentient beings that goes to these realms is huge, much, 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 much bigger than the numbers of sentient beings that take rebirth as a human being. So according to all the migrations, the happy rebirth are much less in numbers than the suffering rebirth. And then from the happy rebirth, being a human being within the happy realms is extremely rare. And then having a precious human rebirth is even more rare. So there is only a very small amount of human beings And then in Buddhism, we also use an analogy. And so they say that obtaining a precious human rebirth is more difficult and rare than a blind turtle who lives at the bottom of a great ocean and comes up once every 100 years to put his head through a golden yoke floating on the surface of the ocean. So just take that picture. Imagine that turtle living on the bottom of the ocean who comes up every 100 years and he's blind. But then when he comes up, he puts his head through the golden yoke floating on the surface of the ocean. That chance, that big, the chance that that happens is compared to the chance of taking a precious human rebirth. So if we can see that just being in this body, having come into this body, having been born into this body, with all these good causes and conditions, there is great value in that. That is coming from so much merit. So just having that is in itself so precious. If we would value that every day, recognize that every day, it will lift up our mind, and it will also help us to direct our mind to make the most benefit out of this precious human rebirth. Right? So for the discussion today, I have only 2 questions. And yesterday I tried with Felipe how we can do that best, because him putting the questions in the chat room didn't work for everyone. And we found out that if I put them now in the chat, you will all be able to see them when you do the discussion group. And then besides that, after the sessions every day or at the end of the day, I will put them all in that we have now a folder in the Google Drive, and I think you all received a link to that this morning. So I will put the questions in there if you feel the need to go back to them or spend more time with them. And yeah, so you will have them available. So the questions for today are, let me first maybe type them and then put them in the box. Oh no, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry. You already had done that one. Yeah, they are. So you can read with me. So the first question is, what aspects of your life are you grateful for and why? And the second, and so make sure that everybody has a turn in expressing. Make sure, you know, if you're a strong leader and you want to take the lead every time, maybe you step back a little bit. If you're very shy and you think, oh, I'll let first everybody else speak, maybe you take a little bit more the lead, you know, because I think it's really helpful if we communicate these things, if you're not just having a listening attitude, you know, but most of the digestion of Dharma comes from talking about it. So that has a different effect than just listening and even thinking about it. Once you start speaking it, you hear yourself and you think, oh no, this is not correct, or that sounds a little bit weird. So there is a totally different learning in speaking about these things. All right, so I'll let you go to the chat room for 10 minutes. And then we come back and we do some questions and answers. I hope you enjoy. We do groups of 3 or maximum 4 people to give you a little bit more time. To find some things to rejoice in with respect to your own life. Did you find some appreciation for certain aspects of your life that you hadn't thought about before? Did you think, wow, because of that, now I can engage, you know, and these aspects do not even necessarily have to be positive. Sometimes we have negative experiences in our life that make that we actually gonna engage in the Dharma, you know, so then you can be grateful for having experienced that, because without that experience, you would never have made that step. We are grateful to English-speaking teachers and internet and online courses. Thank you. That's also great to rejoice in, no? It's, I mean, for me, I think, wow, you know, I can reach so many more people because of the lockdown. I'm already happy here at Tushita when we have 120 people in a course, but now you can even reach many more people. So there is a huge opportunity in the situation that we are in right now, even if it is a negative, you know, for many people, a negative situation, or it's coming from, you know, it looks like a negative experience. A lot of good can come from that. And if we can harvest that goodness, and if we can connect with that goodness that is coming from the situation that we are in right now, we might actually be able to use this situation as a way of moving forward in a more healthy way, more healthy for ourselves, more healthy for the planet. All right, so we have some time for questions. Sumia says, I have a question. Can you explain in a simple way the difference between our mind and consciousness, and when we do our everyday, the daily activities, are we using our mind or our consciousness? So in Buddhism, mind and consciousness are actually synonymous. They are the same thing. Mind, consciousness, awareness are the same thing. Mind is that which is clear and knowing. Consciousness is also that which is clear and knowing. We just use these words in a different context. So when I talk about awareness, I normally do not talk about the mind in general, but I talk about a particular aspect of the mind. If I talk about consciousness, I'm often talk about different types of mind or different types of awareness, or I talk about a continuity of consciousness. But the mind and consciousness are the same. They are all that which is clear and knowing. Clear means being like space, and knowing means that there is a quality that knows. That knows, because in every mind there are appearances, in every mind there are things arising. And so then there is an aspect of the mind is aware of that, knows about that. We don't have to know about that, right? When I sleep deeply, I know nothing. Doesn't mean I don't have a mind. No, the mind is still there. The knower is still there. But I'm not aware of that knowing. Or maybe I can say, there is an aspect in the mind that is suitable to know, No, I'm not sure if that is correct. They say each and every part of the mind, each and every moment of the mind is clear and knowing. Has the aspect of an appearance, of having an object, and has the aspect of a knower of that object. And then within the mind, we have all kinds of qualities arising. Positive qualities, negative qualities. So the delusions, attachment, aversion, anger, doubt, jealousy, pride, they all arise in the mind. And then also compassion, loving kindness, wisdom, concentration. These are all qualities that can arise in the mind. They are in itself also mind. They are in itself also that which is clear and knowing. So whatever is the mind, and then there is something that arises in the mind, within that spacious aspect of the mind. Like the clouds in the sky, the clouds, they arise within the sky. And when we point to the clouds in the sky, we call all that sky. We put in 3 or 4, so that everyone has more time to talk. But I also know that the topics can be very deep and that you need some time to think, and that because of that you might feel, well, I wasn't actually ready yet, but let's check this afternoon how other people think about it. And sometimes we have to finish that discussion within our own home, within our own mind, with other people. And that's why I also give you the questions in the Google Drive folder, so that you have access to that and can continue that process if you haven't finished it while we are here. So then there was a question from Todd. Does what we do here in the course, discussing issues related to Buddha's teachings, constitute engaging studying the Dharma? I think yes, but I wouldn't know why not, because whatever we are doing here is exactly in accordance with what we study in the text. And so I would call that Dharma. Then when you study the Dharma, you study the text, the Buddhist text, you have information in your mind that helps you to access these teachings in a way you get more understanding. That's what I hope, So I think This is also Dharma. Dharma, whatever is going to help you to protect your mind from your own delusions, whatever helps you to engage in practices that are going to counteract the states of mind that cause you suffering and going to help you to generate a mind that are going to bring you happiness in the short term and especially in the long term. That is all Dharma. So whatever teaching have to come this teacher, whatever gives you the tools that you can reduce your own suffering, I would call that Dharma. And then there are different forms of it, how it is presented, and you need to look for a form that is working for your mind. Is that all right? I'll go down again. Let me have a look if there are more. So there is a question that says, is it the same mind that progresses from rebirth to rebirth? So the mind that goes from rebirth to rebirth, in Buddhism we call that the extremely subtle mind. So at the moment we have a coarse mind. The coarse mind is the mind that is connected to the sense consciousnesses, which help us to be aware of everything that we see and hear, taste, smell, and touch. These coarse consciousnesses, they do not go to another life. At the moment of death, they all what we call dissolve. They all disappear. Everything that is connected to my personality disappears at the time of death. Somehow that coarseness dissolves. Then we have a more subtle mind, which is connected to the energy channels and the winds in the body. Also, they dissolve at the time of death. And then what is left is the extremely subtle mind, or the clear light mind. And that extremely subtle consciousness, that leaves the body, and then that takes rebirth into another body. So that one goes from life to life. So, and then there's a question about sleep. And that was me bringing that confusion in the teaching, right? So I'm really sorry for that. So what I said is that the mind is that which is clear and knowing. And then some people say, but sometimes things are happening that I do not know about. For instance, when I have deep sleep, does that mean then that there is no mind? No, Buddhism says the mind is always with the body, is always connected to the body. So you cannot say, although I do not know what happened, there is no mind. Although I do not know what happened, there is no knower. No, we cannot say that. Does that help, Somya? And there's one more question, and then we go to the meditation. Then we do negative actions. It's easy to forget that we are Buddha. How to believe that we are Buddha when we do negative actions? Because it's easy to think that I'm very bad when I do not negative actions, not a Buddha. So there are some teachers some traditions that say we are already a Buddha, but we forgot about that. We somehow cannot remember that. The tradition that I have been taught in, the Gelugpa tradition, doesn't say we are already Buddhas. They say we have the potential to be Buddhas. How do we develop that potential? And then they describe the whole path, how to go about so that your mind becomes more and more in accordance with the mind of a Buddha. But the mind of a Buddha is a very specific mind. If you have the mind of a Buddha, if you really have the mind of a Buddha, you cannot engage in any negative action. So if you find yourself engaging in negative action, you have to say, obviously, I do not have the mind of a do not have the awareness of a Buddha. I do not have the compassion of a Buddha, because I forget. And the Buddha never forgets. The Buddha, each and every moment of his life, of his consciousness, he is fully present, fully aware what is going to happen. He has the capacity to see each and every sentient being's mind, knows exactly where they're coming from, where they're going to, and what they need in order to do so. That mind is completely free of all obscurations, and that mind has developed all the qualities. That mind doesn't make, it's in every moment there is great compassion for each and every sentient being. That mind cannot engage in negativities. It cannot, not possible. So when you see yourself engaging in negative actions, you can say, okay, I'm a human being, and apparently I have delusions. I do not have all the knowledge that I need in order not to engage in negative actions. But I do have the potential. I can look back and think, what was I doing? And how can I do things differently? And what do I need in order to do things differently? And then you can try to apply that. But if we have negative habits, and I'm pretty sure we all have negative habits, right? We have good habits and we have negative habits. So these negative habits, under the influence of them, we create negative actions. We all do that. We don't have to beat ourselves up for that, but we can say, hey, this time I have a precious human rebirth. I have access to teachings who can guide me how to do things in a different way. And I'm going to try to apply that. And if we have habits, deep habits, it will take time to change that. You cannot change that overnight. If I have a very weak body, I cannot go to the gym and expect that in one-time training, I'm perfect. I can lift whatever I want to lift. My body looks in great shape. That doesn't happen overnight, right? Same with the mind. It takes time. So don't beat yourself up when you do negative actions, but acknowledge that you do them and then say, how can I do that differently? All right. So shall we go to the meditation on gratitude to finish this session? Are you ready for that? Any other questions we can maybe keep for this afternoon? So make yourself comfortable so that you have a position, a physical position, a body posture that is going to help you to stay present with your body. To stay present in the here and now. And then give yourself a couple of moments to relax the mind. Engaging in activities like listening, thinking, discussing can create a lot of wind disturbances in the mind. So when we focus on the body, we just let that calm down. And sometimes it's helpful to breathe in deeply and breathe out deeply a couple of times in order to settle the mind. Practicing gratitude is acknowledging and appreciating the things, the people, and the circumstances of our life. First of all, we have a human body. And we didn't get this body randomly. We needed many positive causes and conditions to receive such a body. Feel gratitude for that. And then feel gratitude that you haven't died yet. You can do that by calling to mind people that you have known and who already have died. And somewhere maybe even younger than you are at the moment when they died. So feel gratitude that that hasn't happened to you yet, that you still have all these wonderful opportunities by having a human body. And then feel gratitude that your body is healthy, that you don't have any major physical or mental handicap. Or even if you do, that doesn't hold you back from being here. Feel gratitude that your sense organs are still functioning, your ears, your eyes. Imagine how your life would be if you were blind, deaf, or mute, or if you had no legs or no arms. Feel gratitude for your family and friends. And what I mean with that is those that support you and love you unconditionally. Call to mind how they nourish you and how blessed you are to have them in your life. Feel gratitude for the care and labor of 1,000 generations of elders and ancestors who came before you. Feel gratitude for the environment you are living in. Think of the people, the animals, plants, the insects, all the creatures of the sky and the sea, the air and the water, the fire and the earth. All whose joyful exertion blesses your life every day. Feel gratitude for your wealth, your possessions. I hope you're all living in a house protected from the rain and the wind, and that you have enough to eat every day. That doesn't happen to everyone on this planet, but it happens to you. So feel gratitude for that. Feel gratitude for having met teachings that help you to transform your mind in a way that it serves you and others' happiness. And then take some time to reflect on gratitude for the things in your life that are important to you. Maybe the things that came up in the discussion group. Feel gratitude. Thankful. There are so many conditions that contribute to the goodness in your life, to the good fortune of your life, to the success that you experience in your life. Feel gratitude for that. And now bring your attention to how this gratitude feels in your body. Where do you feel it and how does it feel? And then stay with that feeling. Focus on it. And then each time when you inhale, let that feeling expand into the other areas of your body. Let it fill your chest, your arms and hands, your legs and feet. With each inhale, the feeling of gratitude grows, filling you up, pervading your body and mind. Feel what it does to your body, what it does to your mind. And then return your attention to your breath and let your body remember the sensations of your gratitude. And then we can dedicate all the merits that we have created, all the positive energy that we have created by listening and reflecting and meditating, to the well-being and the happiness of all sentient beings, especially those on this planet going through this difficult time. Thank you very much for being here. I hope to see you in 4 hours' time for our next session of today, where we continue the foundation that we need, that is going to be helpful to generate the mind of loving kindness and compassion. And maybe in this break, if you think about what you're feeling right now in your body and how that can help you to be more compassionate, you know, maybe you understand why this is a foundation, that it is so helpful to do these practices. All right, little job for the next couple of hours. And I will see you at 5 o'clock Indian time.